All right, everybody, welcome to Follow Up Boss Office Hours. We're going to be talking about agent goal setting today, both the act of goal setting and using Follow Up Boss to do so. My name is Lee Adkins. I'll be your host along with Jordan Bridges. What's going on, Jordan?
Hey Lee, thanks for having me. My name is Jordan. As Lee just said, I am a senior customer success manager here at Follow Up Boss. And yeah, I just want to talk to you all a little bit about goal setting in and outside of Follow Up Boss and just how important it is. There's so many ways to break it down, and there's so many ways to really make your time in Follow Up Boss worth a lot more, perhaps than it's been. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll just dive right into it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So in Follow Up Boss, when we log in, everybody will notice a reporting tab here. This is where we're going to be living today. Goals in Follow Up Boss are based around a couple things. They're based around your closing, your commission. Appointments play a big factor in it. And these are all going to be found if you click on reporting and we go to agent goals. This is where we can actually set some of those goals for ourselves. These goals can be personal. They don't just have to be professional goals. If you want to keep track of anything, this is the place to do it. What's awesome about this, and awesome for someone like me too, is you can see a progress bar as we go. And it's always nice to know we're halfway through the year. Are we halfway or more to our goal? Um, to do this, we're going to go ahead and click into the edit here under those 2024 goals. And we can set some personal goals here. We can even change the emoji depending on what it is. I've seen people put, exercise 3 times a week. I've seen marathons. I've seen I want to, buy my own new house by the end of this year. And we can check those goals off as we go. So this is just a great place to have some personal goals that we can reflect on, that we can complete, and then we can look back through the years and see what we've gotten done. This is also going to keep track of all of our deals in Follow Up Boss, how many closed deals we have for the year, what does our sales volume look like, how many leads do we have, and then how many conversations and appointments are we holding. So I kind of want to take this opportunity to talk a little about appointments because this can be a very big part of goals. And I'm going to use a little bit of my personal training past to talk about how we can set those big goals and then how we can break it down into bite-sized, manageable goals. So ideally, what we want to say is this is the volume I'm looking at for the year. This is the commission I expect to make this year, and then work backwards from there. So the thought process is we want to close 30 deals this year, 50 deals this year, whatever it may be. We're going to take a couple steps backward from there and say, how many deals is that a month? Okay, great. Now we know what our monthly is. What does the weekly look like? And then once we kind of get that basic breakdown, we're going to start looking at what do our appointments look like? What do our conversations look like to get to that point? How many phone calls are we making before a deal closes? How many buyer consultations are we going on before we actually, have somebody start to put offers in or anything along those lines? So as we're creating appointments, and this is just a test appointment I created as myself, you all have this tag here where you can set the appointment type and then, whoops, sorry about that. And then later, after we've set the appointment type, we can go ahead and set the outcome. These are customizable to team leads or to account owners, I should say. If we go to our admin section and we go under more, we can take a look at appointments. And this is where you can add types and outcomes. You can move them around. And of course, you can delete them as well. So that being said, what we want to look at is how many appointments, how many conversations, how many activities are we doing between closings? And that's another breakdown. So when we say, okay, I had to go on 10, 15, 20 appointments between closings. Now I know that if I need to close 3 deals, 5 deals a month, I need to be going on setting a lot of appointments. I need to be making a lot of phone calls. So making a ton of phone calls or however many phone calls it takes to set each appointment. Again, we're working backwards. As I was mentioning with kind of my history and what I've done, a lot of people would come and say, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose 20 pounds. And the first thought process here, we didn't necessarily have those time restraints unless, say, you had to fit into some wedding clothes or something like that. The first thought process is, all right, it's about 3,500 calories in a pound. 1 to 2 pounds is a safe amount of weight loss on a weekly basis. Let's work from there. And so I want to apply those same principles to what we're doing here. And that is calls, appointments leading to deals. again, you're going to see all that information here, deals, appointments, and then of course your leads. This is a great way. Obviously, you can go to people and view all those leads, but this is a great way to see who's new coming in and who are going to be those higher priority people for you to be reaching out to. Obviously, this is apart from SmartList and everything else that Follow Up Boss does well. So, Lee, I'll take a quick break there. I don't know if we have questions. I just want to make sure that we are answering anything in the chat.
Yeah, no, I don't see anything. I answered a few direct that were kind of one-off. But one thing I wanted to reference, and I love what you said about mentioning the historical, because I think similarly, if you're doing some of this in Follow Up Boss already, you can use the historical to help you figure this out, especially if you're measuring appointments. How many calls does it take for a YLOPO lead to become an appointment? And then you can use that historical data to figure out how many calls and appointments you need to get that appointment and how many appointments you need to get to a closing. And to your point, also setting up those appointment types where they make sense. So you can measure a buyer consult versus a listing presentation. But no, I love that. I think it's great. And I think it's smart to start with your overarching goal and then break it down into pieces and see those pieces daily, weekly, monthly. No, but I think that's great. And I love the fact that obviously Follow Up Boss is pulling in a lot of this data automatically if you're using the system right.
Right. And I should have prefaced with this, but that's the most important thing is we need to be getting data into Follow Up Boss. We need to be using the system well to have all of this to work as we expect it to. So appointments need to go in, calls need to be made through the system, text, all that communication we need to be having happen through Follow Up Boss, or the reporting gets a lot more difficult. And Lee, this is another way of kind of reverse engineering a little bit. This is where we can start to forecast too. So if we see certain people that have a certain amount of calls, appointments, and deals, and you have that general idea of what it takes to get where they are, you can look at a different agent or you can look at anybody else and say, hey, the normal person takes 10 calls to set an appointment and then 5 appointments to close a deal or whatever that looks like. And then you can look at another agent for the month and say, you've only made a couple calls, you've only set 1 appointment, you're on track to not close a deal until next month or the following. So we can start to kind of, forecast what's to come. And then of course we have the data to look back on. But again, the most important thing that we're looking at here is using Follow Up Boss well. So all of this data is here for us to look at, to review, and then to apply to our businesses.
Absolutely. And this is a newer feature of Follow Boss. It's not super new, but when I was running our team, we didn't have this feature, but I wish desperately that I did. I mean, we honestly did it with paper, but it worked. There weren't even deals in Follow Boss at that time. This is a long time ago, with which to do that. But yeah, just having this, and I think this goes without saying, but I'll say it. Amazing for agent one-on-ones, right? Even if you're not super well prepared as an admin or an owner, you can easily go to this, see those activities. And I think there's also some magic in showing people that you can see these activities. If you're running a team or a brokerage, just demonstrating the idea to your agents that you can see all these things, I think that's powerful as well, because once people realize you can see it and it's being measured, it stays top of mind, and it also makes people competitive. I mean, Follow Boss leaderboard is obviously the ultimate competitive type of thing, but it's all pulling the same data.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to break down how we can find all this information as well. Again, if it didn't happen in Follow Up Boss, it didn't happen. I know a lot of people have heard that. Some people may have not, but it's so important because if people are making calls outside or setting appointments outside, leadership doesn't know. The agents can't look back and see that information. And I just challenge everybody, if you don't want to use your Follow Up Boss number, if you don't want to set appointments in Follow Up Boss, not so much, not a why, but go look back to a conversation, a deal you closed, anything that you've done a year plus ago. What do you remember of it? How are you getting that information and using it to progress your career and to close more deals, to get that referral business? That's very, very hard to do without a CRM and without using a CRM well. So what I want to take a look at real quick too is just a couple ways we can kind of look at the initial information, like appointments, like calls, and see, how many deals are we closing versus the calls and the appointments and the texts and everything else we've done to get to that deal. So under reporting, you're going to have all this information. Like I said, we're living in the reporting tab today. We can look at those calls and see every bit of information. I mean, we can even break it down to talk time, right? What's our average talk time for a deal that closes? If we're not on pace, we know we need to, and it's not an excuse to just stay on the phone for an extra while so you get more talk time, but we know we need to pick up the phone more and we know we need to have more conversations. So obviously we can look at this year, we can look at, the last week, the last month, we can look at all time and get a good idea of calls made connected. But what I like to do is look at deals. Let's say we're going to look at deals for the last quarter. That's very easy to look at those deals, look at those time frames, and then go to calls and say, we're going to actually look at the last 90 days. Okay, now compared to the deals we've closed in the last 90 days, how many calls, how many texts, how many emails have we been sending in the last 90 days? We can look at calls, we can look at texts, and then of course, agent activity will show things like emails and all three of those in one place. In addition to that, we can look at appointments. And this is where coming back into Follow Up Boss and filling out those types and outcomes becomes even more important, because now we can look at that last 90 days again of appointments and say, okay, how many were those initial appointments? How many were those appointments that are way down the road? And it just continue to break down, all the information that we've put in here. I don't think it's a fine line, but I don't think we can put too much information in Follow Up Boss on a specific lead. I think you can have a lot of bad information, like bad leads with bad contact info, but on a certain lead, if you put some extra details in there, that's never going to be a bad thing.
Absolutely. In fact, it's funny. I had something recently where having the conversation of follow up, every follow up, basically. Like if you have a call with somebody, send an email afterwards or a text or whatever's the right thing. And so, again, to your point, not gaming the system, but number one, that's a good business practice. And number two, it's going to give you better data to go, oh, look, 50% of people respond to this follow up text after I have a call with them, or this text gets me a call every time I send it, or whatever that is. But agreed, and you really can't have too much in here unless it's just, again, for the sake of adding a bunch of stuff, but making notes, using background, they're all going to pay dividends because you're trying to manage a bunch of people down to the shortest list of people possible for you to follow up with and then go sell a house. We know you're not going to sit at a computer all day and play in Follow Boss. That's what we get to do, but
I make that mistake a lot because I'm in it all day, every day. So I start flying through different pages and people are like, hold on, slow down. And then I've got, okay, yes, if I was in Salesforce right now, I'd be very confused at the speed that I'm going at. So it's a good reminder for us to slow down. What I wanted to bring up, and you brought up a good point there, is when we're looking at what is an effective use of our time in Follow Up Boss and what's effective, content, wording, whatever, everybody has the option to go into admin, go into your email templates, your text templates, and get an idea of the score. And then, of course, replies. So we can check the ones that are being replied to the most, that are just the most effective. You reach out, these are the ones that people want to respond to you on. Those are the ones that we want to focus on. If we're looking at email templates, same deal. You can see how many you sent versus opens and clicks. I'm a huge proponent of always putting links in your email templates for people to click, because that's an open is fine. A lot of inboxes will automatically open to scan for viruses, so it's not always 100% reliable. Clicks is where we're at. And the whole point of saying this is we want to make sure that we're optimizing our time in Follow Up Boss, and we're sending the most effective material to our leads and clients and everyone in between, and then using that to come back to look at reporting and you can get a good idea of like, yeah, maybe I texted this person 40 times, but they were not very effective texts, versus I texted this person or I called this person. Not to say we're scripting necessarily, but the scripting that I did use that came from here was more effective this time around. So, and then finally, calls are a whole different animal. Obviously, there's not going to be that kind of success rate necessarily, but this is a great coaching opportunity as well. If we're making a ton of calls and we're not seeing connections or conversations, there's a couple things we need to look at. First of all, if no one's picking up the phone, it's probably the time of day that we're calling. Right? We're calling during non-optimal times of the day where people are at work or people are just otherwise very busy. If we're seeing a lot of connecteds or a lot of calls made and a little bit of talk time, but no connecteds or conversations, that's a scripting issue, and that's something that we want to work on. very easy to train from there. I don't want to say easy to train, but easy to identify that we need to train when we start to see a ton of calls and then not much of a response. So,
Right. And it's always hard. I just want to address this straight up. Like, it's always a little hard for us because I know we have agents on who just want to see agent stuff. And we also
mhm.
have team and brokerage owners on who want to see the high level stuff. So we try to do our best to cover both. Um, you have the ability to do or see any of this, no matter who you are. Um, but on the owner admin level, there are a few additional things. You can obviously see multiple agents, things like that. This is a tiny bit off topic, but I do want to mention it. If you want to hop to admin teams real quick, in that same vein, if you are a platform user of Follow Boss, you're going to have multiple teams, or you'll have the ability to have multiple teams. And this is something I've actually been doing a lot recently with reporting, and therefore informing what we're talking about. The team doesn't have to be, it's just an organizational structure. So let's say you have people that take only buyer leads and people that take only listing leads. You could organize those into teams and view some of this reporting and stats or your goals in those segments. So it's a little more relevant. If you have 300 agents as a brokerage, then you could do that. Something I've been telling people recently, some people have a lot of people active in the account and a lot of people not active in their account. You can make a team of people most active and use that, orange and a blue team. Like, it doesn't matter what you call it. But it's just an interesting
Mhm.
organizational structure that you can use to actually view goals and reporting and leaderboards in more segmented ways.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Lee. I see a lot of teams that have, their teams within teams like ISA teams or transaction coordination teams or anything along those lines, admins, leadership, marketing. That being said, a lot of people will exclude ISA teams from the leaderboard because obviously their calls are just insane compared to everyone else. And we're trying to get a fair idea of, hey, this is all the agents, this is the top agents calls, and let's compare everyone onto that and not say like there's been 3,000 calls made this month. Agents are obviously just not going to have the time
Right. That's not a motivator, by the
or
way.
drive to get that done. We don't really want to keep up with that right now as an agent. So yeah, the teams within teams can be incredibly helpful. And it's just a good way to make sure that we're seeing specifically the information we want to. Like Lee mentioned, that can be anywhere. Anywhere in reporting, we can search instead of saying me or everyone, we can just search a specific team if we want to. I
Awesome.
had one more thing, Lee,
Go for it.
and I kind of goldfished it, so I'm gonna try and keep thinking of that one. But
Cool. No, no worries. But I think,
no,
again, using these in tandem to see what you want to see. Agent goals is a great, great high level. How many calls did you make? Great for a one-on-one, or just an evaluation, even if you're not meeting with the agent. You can make a Loom video of their agent goals page and say, hey, great job. You made more calls this month than you made last month, and you got 5 more appointments. So that positive feedback, that positive reinforcement is almost always better than you need to make more calls. Be like, hey, you did make more calls, and look, you got results. Let's keep doing that.
I love it. And I remembered it's a miracle. So what I was gonna say when it comes to goal setting, and this is in general, this is for team leads, this is for agents. It's very easy to say, I need to use Follow Up Boss more. I need to make more calls. We want to be super specific with these goals. Our job, our goal in our business in Follow Up Boss is not to just use something more or to use something better, but be specific. How are we going to use it better and how much more are we going to use it? So I've had a lot of conversations with teams lately, and of course, agent adoption and accountability is always top of mind for every team that I talk to. And the biggest thing that I'm telling teams right now is be so specific. When you say, I need you to make calls and Follow Up Boss, how many? How many on a daily basis? How many on a weekly basis or monthly basis? When you have those one-on-ones later, or even as an agent, if you're telling yourself, I'm going to make 10 calls every single day through Follow Up Boss, there's not that wiggle room to say, like, I did pretty good. It's, did you hit that goal or not? And a
Yeah,
lot of agents, the best agents are driven, right? They're intrinsically motivated and they're going to hit those goals that they set for themselves.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And it's funny because I say that in every session about everything else. Like, help your future self when you name a task. Make good notes so when they call you back, you know what you're talking about. but it couldn't be more true for goals. Like truly, and I'll give a short kind of anecdote. Like with our team, what I did a lot of times was we did a paper, fill out your goals, start with this. Come to the meeting with something. But then that would always be the conversation, oh, you want to exercise more? Like, what does that mean? Like, are you gonna run Monday, Tuesday, Thursday? Like it's got to be specific enough that it's attainable and measurable. And I know that can be hard for people. So whether it's an accountability buddy, a good friend, a spouse or partner, somebody else on the team, somebody else at your brokerage, it's really important to do that and just talk it through with somebody else. Because again, it's really easy to be like, well, I want to do more next year or whatever, but measuring that in a way that makes sense and making it attainable, right? I kind of to your back to your like personal training example. It's like you probably don't want to say like I want to lose 30 pounds. Like, okay, great. Why don't you do 10 a quarter or 10 a month or like, that's always going to be more realistic. But I think
Hmm.
you also hit the nail on the head. I think in this industry in general, people are driven a little more type A, a little more, thing to thing to thing. Like I just need to do more, but breaking it down to say I'm going to set one appointment a week. I'm going to make 10 calls a week. Whatever, those things are always going to be more. There's a saying, and I almost feel like I always get it wrong. It's a military saying. It's slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yep.
So
Yep.
one more super quick story. I worked with somebody a long time ago, and they had a goal of 100 calls a week for their agents. And I was like, "Well, how many calls are they making right now?" And they're like, "None." And I'm like, what if the goal was one? What if they had to make one call a day or a week or whatever it was? They'd be pretty embarrassed to come into this office and tell you they couldn't make one call. What they'd probably do is start to walk in and go, "Oh crap, I'm gonna go up in the parking lot and make a call so I can come in and not be embarrassed that I couldn't make one call before our meeting." So
Hmm.
as much as it feels like I want to double this, I'm gonna triple my GCI, these are all multiples and the dollar figures are big. So if you simply do one more of each thing each day or each week, it's going to have a massive compounding effect. And Follow Boss is an amazing tool to be able to see that if you're using it for what it does.
Absolutely. And I think another thing is, habit building and timing is so important with things too. So I tell a lot of the teams that I work with to set some time on their calendar. If you know that every day right after lunch is like really slow for you, never have meetings, you never really do showings, throw half an hour on your calendar and say, this is my call block, and I'm just gonna make as many calls as I can in this focused time. And then everything else is a little bit more reactive beyond that, right? People are texting you back, they're calling you back, maybe they missed you, but your inbox will start to fill up at that point. And then just on the anecdote page, I was thinking of somebody I knew that, they had a goal to work out X amount of days, and they handed a friend an envelope with like I don't know, 2 grand in it. And they're like, if I don't hit my goal, that's yours. But they really want to hit their goal now for themselves and because they put their money where their mouth was. Not to say people should do that, but the idea is we're putting a little bit more on the line. And for real estate agents, I mean, if you're working on commission only, you're essentially doing that, right? You're
Yeah.
saying if I don't hit my goals, this money is gone. It was never mine in the first place.
Yeah. That's great. I love that so much. And I think, again, just the keeping it simple is super important. It's easy to get carried away and oh, I've never done this before. I'm going to set 10 goals. Um, but yeah, using the data and Follow Boss. And real quick, back to the personal goals. I think also really important um, for your own motivation and additionally as a team. Now, those things don't have to be shared if they don't want to be shared by people. But people love to celebrate other people. Like, that's amazing. You paid your house off, or you were able to take a week off. And these are important goals. Like, as much as we can say, you got to hit your calls, got to do your appointments, got to do the right label on the appointments, got to do all that. Living a good life is also a very important goal and easy to, you can always make one more call or do one more thing in this business. Um, but setting some balance goals is also I would highly encourage you to set some balance goals, even if it's just I'm gonna eat dinner with my family one day a week. That's a huge thing, and it'll pay dividends in your personal life and in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a lot of people and like my wife even, you know, some of these goals that are set are like, I really want to get this, like this bag this year. And it's like this nice whatever bag, or, you know, I want to get these cool new shoes. Like those are great goals to have. Those are rewarding yourself for, you know, doing the job well. And so as you see yourself complete that and you continue to grow your business, increase your, you know, year over year income, that's where those goals are going to seem awesome at the start. And then you'll look back and be like, man, I had to wait a long time to pay off like my $1,000 credit card debt. That's not even a thought in my mind anymore, but look how far I've come.
Yeah, absolutely. And then back to the idea that it does have the historical, like you mentioned before. You can go back and it's super motivating to be like, oh, 2 years ago, I had a goal to do this, and that was, I crushed that forever ago. I forgot about that. I think same thing, driven personalities move towards more achievement, but it's also good to look back and say, you know what? Hey, I wrote this down and I did it. Something else I found with our team that I'll just drop real quick, and then if we have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll wrap shortly after this. But um, I would always have the agents do their goals in November, December, and then I'd pull them out in their first quarterly one-on-one. And a lot of them would be like, "Oh my goodness, I forgot about that," but almost always followed it by saying, "But I'm actually doing that," because they put it down, they put it in the universe, you put it in your subconscious, and maybe you're not walking around every day thinking, "Oh, I need to do this," but you've put it out there, you shared it with somebody, and lo and behold, it starts happening. So now that said, you still have to obviously take action towards it, but just getting it down on paper and putting it out into the universe is pretty important. And again, a team, a spouse or a partner, like whoever you need to share that with. I love the money thing. I think that's pretty brilliant. Like hand somebody an envelope and be like, I'm not going to get this back unless I do it.
That's your moment of intrinsic motivation expressing itself as you know, as outside motivation to say like, all right, I had this moment, I really want to get this done. I might not feel like that later, but now that this is out there and like I could lose some money over this or I could whatever, I'm gonna get it done because I have no other choice.
It's a great example. I love that. Cool. Any final kind of words of encouragement for people to use this tool or dig in or anything any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of teams that I was just starting and they were overwhelmed and they were saying this to me. I wasn't saying this to them. Literally multiple teams. You got to eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? It's a big beast to tame, but the idea here is we're doing little bits at a time, and I would encourage everybody, first and foremost, communicate through Follow Up Boss as much as you can. That's one of the most important things we can do. And then beyond that, start to build habits. Communicate through Follow Up Boss, set some time aside on your calendar, everything else will come.
Beautiful. Well said. Perfect. Well, thank you guys for being on. Jordan, thank you as always.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Really appreciate you. We'll do it
Anytime.
again.
All right,
Awesome.
everybody. Thank you. Have a great day.